Well, so I am a UNESCO SDG 14 Ocean Ambassador.
Done.
Right.
That's what
But
I use.
but I think I'm a global citizen. So I'm a global citizen first, and serving humanity is one of the SDG 14, one of the 1,500 SDG 14 ocean ambassadors since 2017.
Cool.
That'll.
Do you want me to move this mic closer? Or you
Yeah, if you could just get it a touch closer, it'd be great.
This? Okay, I'll let you.
Gotcha.
I'll knock it over or something. So is that level?
Yeah.
About like that?
Yep.
I'm going to call that pretty close to my talking normal
What
time.
you're doing right now is
That,
perfect.
okay,
I'll
all
give you
right,
that.
okay. I'll try. I may get a little excited,
That's okay.
That's fine. I have
okay,
that.
and I may get emotional.
That is
Is also highly likely
Yeah.
on some topics, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I think we're good. This interview has been a long time coming. We are very excited this week to be sitting down with George Cummings. We met you in 2022 here at EarthX. We're back in 2024. George is a UNESCO ambassador for the UN's SDG 14. He is a global citizen. I'll let him tell you a little bit about what he does. But George, welcome finally to Conservation Connection.
Well, you guys know how much of I'm going to call it promoter I've been of you, as the importance of documenting story, because story is so important. If we don't tell, then they don't know. And that's our big problem that it's been for so long, is ignorance, not stupidity, but ignorance of stuff. So, right. So having any platform that people can go to and get these snippets of knowledge, hopefully leading to wisdom, and ultimately to action is absolutely critical. And because podcasts and things like this are much more not palatable, used in the early career, are 20, 35 down to teenager group, or smaller even. That's where they're going for their stuff. You know, they're not like the rest of the baby boomers and me, who are still in LinkedIn and Facebook and email. But at any rate, honor to you guys for everything you've been doing, your perseverance and all of that. It's a humbling honor to have this opportunity at EarthX.
Well, thank you so much. We are excited to be here with you at EarthX and
Yeah.
so excited to have you on the show.
Sorry, I'm gonna have you take off your, not your hat, your name tag.
This guy-
because I'll hear the jingle.
Oh,
But you're fine.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's
so-
perfect. I was actually going to say that too. So I wanted to dive in before we get too far into this
Okay.
conversation. Could you explain what is / are SD? What does SDG mean?
Okay, so the United Nations, back in the millennium, in 2000, established our first 10 millennial goals, which are the millennial sustainability development goals. So this is the things to make our entire, these are the ideas that all of these experts have spent countless man hours meeting, discussing, debating, and coming up with agreements on the things that are really important to humanity's future, and in essence, getting back in balance with our planet, with people's interrelationships between individuals in a country, in between countries, and then as a whole global citizen thing, as we were just talking earlier. We need people first being global citizens in all they do. And the old saying, you know, think global, act local. We really have got to help them connect the why of the global down to the microcosm of their unique point of view of the things that are important to them.
Absolutely.
So that sustainable goals in 2000 were health, education, poverty, welfare, things along those lines. In 2015, they sat down again and added 7 more. So now we have the 17 sustainable goals of the planet and a fairly large number of agreement from all the ambassadors of all the countries on all of their equality. None of the sustainable goals is more important than one of the others. However, they also came to the realization, the epiphanal, eye-opening aha moment of there's a couple of these things, like the ocean, that we have a very finite timeline left to work on. And what I mean by that, the odds that we're going to fix global hunger in the next 10 years are probably a bigger challenge than we think. Or even the equality of the genders, or the equality of cultures, or the equality of lesser developed countries, small island states to the large developing. All of those things have got a timeline that we can get to that, I'll even use the word utopian hope, that we do get along on this planet like we should be getting along as one planet, one ocean, one tribe that we're heading for. So,
but some things like the ocean
yeah,
have a shorter clock.
That's exactly the point I was getting to, Chance, is that we now, from a science, I started as a biochemist in the college years, which is now a few decades ago, 4. And then in 1986, while working in Australia, began diving there and observing sharks in a Great Barrier Reef in a place called Shark Alley. And had actually went back in 2000. I wanted to be in Sydney for the millennium, and I was. And I said, you know what? Let's go back to those dive sites we documented in 1986 and see what's there. And I came up from my dive, and the tourists were with their fins still on, the tide had gone out, walking on top of branching corals, breaking them off. And my mask was filling with tears, and I was just going, oh my God. And I said, okay, I'm a scientist. I know they don't know. They wouldn't do if they knew what I knew. Right. So how do I help them get it? So then I put myself on my own personal quest to find other divers who happen to be some kind of science and say, what can we do for this? And of course, if you do that long enough, and I started attending the world's largest dive show on a consistent basis called DEMA, and there the scientists and the Nat Geo, Smithsonian, all of those photographers and videographers go to that same show. And so you begin networking that. After you've gone, it's not that big of a community, number one. So you go enough times, all of a sudden everybody knows who you are, what you're doing, and you begin building a network community of people that are, my new term, PLU, people like us. We share common bond of, we know our ocean's bad, we know we want our ocean fixed, and we're going to do it from whatever angle we all see, like Sylvia Earle asked us in 2009 with the Mission Blue. Whatever connection you've got to the ocean, whatever skill you've got that could help the story be told of the restoration of the ocean, please go forth, please do that, please engage as many people as you can. So I just took that to heart as a mission, to see Sylvia's dream become a reality, and encourage every other person I know, just like me, that was inspired and loved Sylvia and Cousteau's for what they were doing. So her Mission Blue thing for Hope Spots, and I am one of the co-sponsors of the Papua New Guinea Hope Spot, as a matter of fact, that we do that very thing. And so that's all I put myself on a mission. Hey, do you like Sylvia? You know about the Mission Blue Hope Spot? Do you know about the sustainable goals? This is the roadmap that we're working on in this decade of ocean science, literacy, science, and action, and you want to be involved because I went on a quest for influencers. Who are the people I knew from whatever relationships I had in business and technology and medicine and biochemistry and diving, put that all together and say, in your space, are you interested? You want to pledge and help us whenever we're ready. And so I've done that, thousands of presentations, that same story. We're going to be implementing things that will help us restore health to the ocean. Ocean Health Index, which is 127 factors, pH, CO2, nitrogen, phosphorus, plastic, pick it up, count the fish, blah, all of these things that tell us, it's kind of, so I worked in the hospital environment for much of my career. You're coming in for your annual physical. Every 5 years, we have the Ocean Health Index physical. If you looked back 30 years ago, that Ocean Health Index had prediction, not possibilities ahead. And we would look at that and say, ooh, pH is dropping. Oh, oxygen dropping. Oh, temperature going up. Oh, fish count going down. Plastic count coming up. All of those things, we keep looking at them and make some kind of trend analysis of which way stuff's going.
Yeah, absolutely. So if somebody listening wanted to find some of that information about
Uh-huh.
how we're measuring the health of the ocean and some of the current data on it, what are some resources that somebody who cares but doesn't necessarily know how to get there?
Right. Frankly, just Googling United Nations, UNESCO, Sustainable Goal 14, life below water, things like that will get you to the generic page, get you to the unique SDG page, and from there it's just a matter of several days occasionally with a cup of coffee or your adult beverage or whatever, and put 15 or 20 minutes looking at there's a rampant amount, just unbelievable amount of resources available in multiple languages. And yeah, when we're working on getting all of the data, eventually that's one of the things that I've held my hand up to help use the South by Southwest entity that I, of course, was one of the co-creators 33 years ago to create a Technology Geek Fest, which is a sister event to EarthX, by the way. Trammell and EarthX and South by Southwest are brother-sister relationships. Funding and ideas and concepts and interactions and all of that has been a long, beneficial, mutual relationship between the two events that have so many common, overlapping, supportive amplification purposes.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you can find that, again, it doesn't take much to just say sustainable goals, UN sustainable goals, and from there, you just kind of look at what appeals to, that's the thing, is let this be what appeals to the person and let that organic search of finding, oh, I'm really interested in mangroves or whatever. You know, the interesting thing now, of course, is this tsunami that's happening in people traveling. Where now, when people search to do their holidays, over 80% of those queries include something like holiday, working, eco, environmental, tourism, experience, blah, blah, right? They're seeking, so talk about a giant need gap that needs to be filled. The opportunity for all of these small island states and these coastal communities where ocean experience exists, whether it's snorkeling or sailing or fishing or scuba diving, all of those places now have these resources available for people to see, hey, I'm going to go do a turtle count.
Here's how I can go get involved.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
It's really funny that you bring that up. I think you were about to say this. You can say it.
About the food testing? Oh, I was gonna
Yeah.
mention it.
It's really funny you bring that up because one of the things that we have been looking at as an org is just because we're very, I used to teach scuba diving in the Virgin Islands. I'm very familiar with getting people out and into the ocean and involved personally. Is we've been kind of like kicking around the idea of working with some really high-level Caribbean resorts
Yes.
to create like teenage programming
Uh-huh.
so that students in the like 12 to 18 age range can have the opportunities to do real science and contribute to a real data set while they're on vacation. Because I think those early opportunities are so important because they can, I can remember.
Life-changing.
Right. And they set the stage for, they're not going to ignite passion in everyone, but
No.
if we get 1 in every 100,
Right.
that's a massive increase.
Yeah, and I think that really ties in with kind of what you mentioned earlier, saying you came up out of the water and you saw tourists like stepping on these corals,
Yep.
and you were upset, but you couldn't be mad because surely they didn't know, because you see that often as
What human would do that?
Yeah, you're in the water, you're snorkeling.
Yeah.
You clearly want to be in the ocean
Yeah.
and you want to experience these things.
Right.
And you never want to be hurting something that you
Love.
and that you care about. So I think, like what you said, that your goal is to do ever since you came up out of the
Yeah.
water that day, to share that information, to just give people that resource
Yep.
to make what are the towers called?
Carnes.
Yeah.
Cairns.
Yeah.
To make cairns, and they don't know that that's
Yeah.
potentially disrupting that
Yeah.
habitat of
Yeah.
these like microorganisms
Yeah.
and lizards and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But once you tell them, those same people are probably going on hikes and seeing those cairns that are put there by tourists and like kicking them over because
Yeah.
they're like, you're not supposed to be doing that.
Yeah.
You know, people don't know what they don't know.
Exactly.
So it's great
Exactly.
that you're spreading that
Yeah.
information on that mission.
Well, it's virtually one of the things that they mandate us there at the United Nations to do. It's called knowledge transfer. It's their 10 challenges, targets to the Sustainable Goal 14 to kind of well define overfishing and pollution and fish counts and things like that. So we have this unique set of challenges to kind of keep us focused. I've quite frankly changed all of that down to just 4 things. In your life, if you can look at what you're doing every day and say to yourself, from your point of view, do you think this is helping us have clean air? Is this helping us have clean water, clean food, clean energy that leads to security? Because an awful lot of conflicts are over those 4 things, not having or not having those.
Yep.
You've got them, the other guy doesn't, that's a conflict if you're border states. So if we can do that to the planet, if we can get just those basic things heading in the right direction, to give people hope that we'll get there with the solutions that we've got available to us. That's the other thing at the UN, 7 years of seeing, because anyone that creates an innovative, game-changing technology, of course, is going to bring, in this space, is going to bring it to the UN to show it. 1, so it gets adopted and it starts being implemented, and 2, of course, they're wanting their dream to, be sustainable, so they can keep doing it and keep improving it and all of those things. So we're constantly exposed to things that just are mind-boggling, which is, of course, like how we met. Oceanite was one of the first things that, as a chemist, as a diver, as a scientist that's been observing the ocean for a long time, I went, oh my God, here's one of the things that can actually be done. Trying to think of a solution for microfibers in the ocean that are already in there is tough. Keeping them out was simple. A filter on a washing machine that costs $5 to stop those fibers from going in stops our synthetic clothes we buy and stuff like that. Bigger problem, of course, is cigarette butts are full of microfibers. So again, but that's got solutions. Get people aware of that problem and then make available on beaches and along streams and rivers where it's easily for them to be introduced into the water system. Get those things there so that people are at least lessening or decreasing the amount of cigarette butts they're just throwing away if they knew that that's probably led to the microfibers that some bug consumes and another bug a little bigger consumes, gets to a small animal that consumes it, but it turned into a toxin in that process, and then now it goes up the food chain. We've been eating it, and it's pretty well documented now. That's probably one of the key sources that we've got cancer, is the microtoxins that came out of the way that we're now seeing plastics in breast milk and crossing the placental barrier, and so it goes on and on and on. It's in our lives because we've been consuming it so for a while. Those are big challenges. Protecting a coastline that is now not an option, since NOAA has told us this past year that we might have or we could have. Be prepared for 5 foot. This is like the weather report. The hurricane's going to come in 2 weeks. Better go get your plywood. Better run to HEB, get you some water, some batteries, and get prepared. They do that. Come back after the storm, take the plywood down, mop it up, sweep it up, and life gets back to normal in a few weeks. We're going to now have the slow storm that's persistent, and the persistent is this will start first. It's already happening. Some islands where now, because of the sea rise we've had in the last 10 years, we'll say, are actually standing in water just with normal tides twice a day on their land. When that begins to happen, their land is now salted. Their ability to grow their food, to sustain them, goes way, way down. And so, yeah, we have places like the Marshall Islands, the Micronesians and stuff like that, where we're really already beginning to have to move people. And this 5 foot of sea rise in 20 years, if you understand that 80% of our population lives near a coastline. The impact when you watch the NOAA simulations that are very easy to find on the internet now, to show you what does it look like to have 1, 2, 3 meters of sea rise and a coastline where again, this is the coastal communities that are going to suffer and islands first. So those are where our first focus of help has got to go. We've got to focus where's the most people that are at the lowest lying. They're going to face the challenges of climate chaos. So we're going to focus on those areas, put in this oceanite product that's the only endorsed product by UNESCO for this application so far, back in 2018, that will provide where we've lost coral structure, which we've lost about 80% or more of the coral structure if we looked back about 50 years ago, that's gone. And that provided a lot of people a lot of protection of their coastlines, where their property sets and where their lives are and where they grow their food. Well, all of that is now at high risk to go away. And so by putting in these giant oceanite ships, we call them, of this biochar aggregate block that could be the size of a container or maybe the size of this table we're sitting at, down to a smaller thing. So in different sizes, different shapes a little bit, laid out in a maze in order to achieve wave break whenever just the normal tides come, but certainly now whenever a moderate storm comes or even a small hurricane. Now, how much something like this is going to do when it's a Category 5 hurricane during a king or super tide at the same time, that's going to be a bad day. That's almost back to like what we were talking about, the way people prepare for a hurricane. You'll have to prepare still for a hurricane even if there's oceanite out there. But that 10-year, 15-year gap between hurricanes, the storm damage, the normal damage that would occur from a storm if you didn't have this product in your ocean would be much worse. Yeah, and that's really what this comes down to.
Yeah, and if you've been listening to Conservation Connection for a while,
yeah,
one of our very first episodes actually on the show back in 2019 was with Reef Life Foundation talking about the oceanite product, which, like George is saying here, is a really cool product and is essentially building these new reefs. You know,
yeah.
I think if you've been listening to the show for a while, again, you probably know that we're losing a lot of our reefs. They're degrading. So this is coming in and saying, okay, how can we combat that?
Yeah.
And it's giving resorts and people who have lots of money an opportunity to say, like, hey, you know, if you put this out in front of your resort or by your island, you're going to mitigate the wave damage. And oh, guess what? That looks good for your insurance company. They're going to give you insurance because you have a way,
right,
just like mangroves,
right,
to lessen some of that impact,
right,
from these storms and rising tides.
Right. And I'm going to just expand on that because there's a few things since you did that interview that we now know that we were thinking about, didn't know, and then some that are literally more very recent discovery and aha moments for us even. Right. Always, every product in life always has room for improvement. We will never stop doing research and development with the oceanite team at all. But so it's not just coral. And there's some places that there's never been substrate, but they're going to suffer with this 5 foot of sea rise. So for those places that didn't have mangroves, didn't have saltgrass or seagrass ever anyway, this is new protection for them. And again, this is not an optional. If you're the mayor of some community, you do not want to be the one that didn't say, oh, I grasped what was coming ahead and I prepared for the future, as opposed, it's the Boy Scout thing. Be prepared. This is, you don't want to be the one that waited too late and now your unlucky day comes every 10, 15 years or whatever, and the storm comes, because once 1st Street, 2nd, and 3rd Street are all wiped out, you got to do all the building back. So now you've already lost all of that, I'll call it, valuable resources and property. Could be the city council's building goes, yeah? all of that's lost. You're going to have to restore all of that. And ultimately, you're going to still have to do something like oceanite. And that's, again, it's the only one out there now. You're going to have to do something like that, or every time a storm comes, it's going to be the same thing again, over and over and over. So a smart decision maker is going to say, and it's going to be cheaper to buy products now. It's going to be a smaller problem to do now, or put a different way. If we would all done like Cousteau told us, put people in the ocean so they could love it, and people protect what they love, at some point in time, they're going to say, oh my God, we've got to do something to protect. So you're going to ultimately end up spending the money. I suggested to you, if we would have done things like this 20 years ago, the budget would have been so much less. The problem's gotten so much bigger now that we're going to spend 5, 10x what we were spending back then. We do not want to be sitting here 20 years from now.
Saying, oh, I wish we'd started.
Wish we'd have started then, because now it's going to be 5, 10, 20 times the budget now, which is the 5, 10 times the budget that was then. So are we going to continue? Are we going to continue to have bad choices, make bad choices, and expecting a different outcome? Is not wisdom for any policymaker out there.
So I kind of want to end on this thought of, from your perspective, what is the best, simple, everyday action that the average
Oh, I've
American
got
can
that
do?
answer.
Yeah,
Immediate.
That's why I asked the question.
I've kind of gone through a few different iterations of this in the last 10 years of what can we do that people can do. That's the other thing. Yeah. There's not much. They can put the filter in the washing machine. That's an action they can do. Things like that. Doable things by the individual. They can stop using a straw and a plastic bottle and cut back on how much beef they eat. We have that list, as I was describing, one list from NOAA, 50 actions people can do that are low or no cost, and the UN has a similar list of 50 things. So yeah, no straws, no plastic bottles. There's 48 other things on there that are some ideas that some people may not have thought of that are very doable, but I have now resolved the one action that's almost no cost that every person on the planet that eats can do.
That's most of us, I think.
Yeah, and that is composting. Taking our bio waste with a small amount of effort and turning it into living soil. It is kilo for kilo, the best CO2 sequester we have on the planet. Everybody in school for a long, long time, we all knew about trees made oxygen from CO2, and that was kind of the prevalent thing, I'll say. And if you ask probably even still 1,000 people, they'd think it was trees is the CO2 sequester. And of course, then as we all started thinking of this stuff, as we began recognizing the problems, we discovered some other things. Mangroves were more effective than a big pine tree, and that saltgrass was important, and seagrass was important, and kelp was important. Things like that. Whale poop is important, right?
Yeah, that goes to the bottom of the ocean.
Yeah,
It's
right.
devastating.
Boom. So we've discovered things in this process, but pound for pound, the new, better thing that's so simple to do, doesn't cost any money, and has triple win from my point of view. One is the amount of CO2 it sequesters into the soil by the bugs, birds, the bugs, the worms, the fungus, the virus, and stuff that all interacts with the roots and the plants to sequester CO2. If you grow food in it, wow, that's a win-win there, because you know you're putting clean water on it with your clean seeds, and you're not going to put fertilizer, pesticides, and things like that in it. And you're going to put some really healthy food in your own body that's going to keep you out of the hospital a little longer perhaps in life, things like that, the win-win long-term, short-term benefits of that. And you can do it. This is not rocket science to do this, so everybody can do it. And we're not putting it in the landfill, covering it up, and turning out CO2 methane bombs, which is even worse. So it's like, talk about shooting ourselves. The cost to collect up this bio waste, put it in some truck, put the gas to haul it out to some landfill, covering it, all of that cost could be reduced. There are a couple of countries now that have got no garbage cans anymore, right?
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. We should have that almost everywhere on the planet. For sure, zero bio-waste should be going into the landfills. I'll give you an example. There in Cozumel, I discovered the kids years ago were being taught how to compost and how to do gardens at school. I wanted to put that on steroids, so I came up with the idea of let's get the bio-waste of cruise ships. And let's trade them with the big problem islands have. They have stuff like aluminum and glass and plastic that are non-bio waste that force them to make another landfill. The cost of making another landfill. What if the cruise ships and the islands traded bio waste for physical? The cruise ship has got to take its aluminum cans, glass bottles, and all that stuff and properly dispose of it anyway. So you trade off bio waste so that they can now make compost on an island.
Which is kind of a big deal because islands are oftentimes sandy soils nutrient deficient.
They have no soil.
So bringing
They're
yeah. break down into healthy soil is really
they're inches of soil on some ancient coral bed,
right.
barely supporting the ability to grow in those places. They have to work hard to get to the point that they've got enough soil to grow. That's
Right.
most
And
islands.
fresh food.
Yeah, right. So this is, again, back to the win-win-win. They're growing their own food. So in my crazy caveman thought process, one, we would help islands not have to build another landfill as soon. We would be able to create soil in the schools, teach them to garden and farm. And I suspect you, if you start them in first grade doing this, by the time they graduate from high school, they've now learned how to compost really well and how to garden really well.
And
all,
build those habits.
exactly. They have that skill. Let's just put it, they are now composting, gardening, growing fools that can feed themselves partially. And I suggest to you that there are odds that when they do get married and they do have children and they're living in a home, if the schools provided a place that a family can come to, the family that lives at that school zone comes to the school now because they got excess soil. And you can collect soil for yourself, go home. So that's, the husband will say, hey, honey, let's get some soil. We'll start growing. And even if it's only 10% of their food supply that they grow, that's money they've saved. That's health that's keeping them out of the hospital. That skill. And their kids are now learning it not only at school, at home. And we're going to turn out better global citizens that are healthier. And we're solving the big CO2 problem that we've got with, and we're going to, from win-win-win perspective. So if there's two things that I would suggest to the audience rather than just one. One is composting. Get with almost any computer has got somebody that's doing this if the schools are not doing it. Get those skills, start doing that, or get your community like Austin's doing, where we're going to be one of that's going to have bins. So it doesn't matter whether it's the community or maybe it's your neighborhood association. Somehow get a composting thing happening in your individual life somewhere. And the other thing is just to do that little Google search of 50 low or no cost sustainable actions for humans to do, or I will give you links to those two things, and you can put them with this podcast so people can find it real easy that get this. But it's just really a very simple UN list of actions to help the planet. Will get you there eventually, and it's in several languages already. I don't think it's in all 150 or 60 yet, but it's certainly in the big 10 or 20 languages already, and it's so simple to do. And it's, I think as people begin doing that, there's some kind of a nature reward interchange thing, cosmic thing that's happening there. And to put a tomato when your neighbors come over on the plate that's sliced and you eat it and you go, that's the best tomato I've ever eaten. It's pretty rewarding to make somebody go, and I grew it. Yeah. So it's a win-win-win, I think, from so many perspectives. If everybody will please compost, and then look at the list of 50 and see if there's anything else that you can adopt. Look at the list. Look at things from that own point of view. If I'm doing something that's helping with clean air or clean water or clean food or clean energy, keep doing it. If it's not, let's try to stop doing it. try to encourage your friends. Even I now asking people to come up with your own little challenge in your circle of drinking buddies or sports buddies or whatever. Come together and everybody throw $1, $10, $100 in the pot and say, we're going to have a competition. Who can make the most compost this year, right? And then they win the prize or whatever. So make your own little, it's not ice bucket challenge. This is the compost challenge. Who can make the most living soil in your circle of influence, and encourage others to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say, if you're listening and composting is a little scary to you, or you don't know where to get started, Chance and I started composting maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and it does at first feel like it takes more effort. You're like, okay, I crack an egg and I don't throw it in the trash can. I throw it in my compost bucket, and then I go and take it outside.
Yeah.
But you get used to it over time, and then it becomes second nature, and it's weird not to do it. And if you are like, oh, I don't know where to start, I don't know what to do, honestly, one of the easiest things to do is go on YouTube.
I was just getting ready to say, there's YouTube, and there's even some of them here. Several communities, they've got these little boxes that you put in your kitchen that's all sealed up, so no smell. So you start, and then you take that when that's filled, 2, 3, 4 days of cooking, that little bit of rubbish that's there to bio waste, you go and put it in now you take it to the compost bin.
Right.
It's not like you got to walk to the compost bin every time you crack an egg.
Right, and that's exactly what we do. We have a compost bucket.
Yeah, there you go.
We keep it clean, and I dump it out every time that I've got, a bunch of scraps to go out into my bigger worm compost bin out in the backyard.
It's amazingly, there are innovative people that are now actually even trying to help us almost semi-automate that stuff. They have kind of like the trash compactor that a lot of us go, what the heck do I need that for? Well, this is a similar device, we'll call it functional kitchen thing that will be a place that you can actually just put this stuff in, and it's all the time swirling, mixing, has a place to put a little bit of the secret sauce that accelerates the composting process and things like that. So, of course, not everybody's going to buy, I don't know, let's say their $50, $100 device to help them compost, or it may be for the person who lives in an apartment in New York City, this is the perfect thing for them to be able to participate. So the point of all of that was there's a lot of solutions for composting, down to the caveman approach to the most high-tech approach. Anywhere in between there, individuals or communities or neighborhoods, just compost, 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 please, please, please.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And thank you so much for joining us
Yeah.
on the show, George.
Sure.
Really appreciate you being here, and we can't wait to see you again next year.
That's right. Well, and all the times in between that we at least interact on different things. I know we follow each other as often as we can. Being a planet warrior is not for the meek. It's a 12-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week passion that once it bites you, and the purpose is so magnetic. And then the more you start working with youth and the future generations and see that you're giving them some hope, the reward, I'm going to call it the Desmond Tutu Dalai Lama joy story. And I'm going to inject that. If people have not seen that, speaking of YouTube, if you want to spend a really great hour and you want to have happiness in your life, go watch Desmond Tutu and Dalai Lama talk about joy, of their friendship and what they think joy is and how one receives joy. It'll change your life.
Love it. Well, again, thank you so much for being here.
Sure.
And hope you guys enjoyed this episode of Conservation Connection.
Likewise, and thanks you guys for coming to EarthX and being here again. It's so awesome to have you here. I think I want to do something like this at South. We have a few teams, but I may want to do something that's our little niche of environmental point of view of technology intersecting with environment. So we'll talk about that. All right.
Perfect.
It's okay?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it was great.
Yeah.